Hello, everyone. This is the Pale Watcher, and I'm here with a story for those of you settling in for the night. Before we begin, go ahead and like this video if you appreciate long-form horror, and subscribe if you want more tales to accompany your late hours. Also, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, get comfortable. Pull up your blankets. Let the world outside fade away. This is the story of Dr. Sarah Chen, and the patient who was always on time. The appointment appeared in my calendar on a Tuesday morning in late October. I noticed it while reviewing my schedule over coffee, my ritual before the day's sessions began. The steam from my mug rose in lazy spirals, catching the early morning light that filtered through my kitchen window. Outside, Portland was beginning its slow awakening, the sound of distant traffic, a dog barking 3 houses down, the papery rustle of fallen leaves tumbling across pavement. 11:47 p.m. J. Pallor, initial consultation. I stared at the entry, my thumb hovering over the delete button. I didn't take appointments past 7 p.m. I never had. My practice specialized in cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety disorders, and I maintained strict boundaries between my professional and personal life. 10 years of practice had taught me that much. Boundaries weren't just professional ethics, they were survival mechanisms. Without them, my clients' anxieties would bleed into my own life, their obsessions becoming my obsessions, their fears colonizing my dreams. I'd learned this the hard way in my first year of practice, when a client with severe panic disorder had called me at 2 a.m., convinced he was dying. I'd talked him down, then stayed awake until dawn, my own heart racing with sympathetic adrenaline. The next morning, I'd established firm rules. Emergency calls went to the crisis hotline, not to me. My time after 7 p.m. was sacred. So this appointment made no sense. I opened the calendar settings, searching for how this phantom appointment had materialized. No email confirmation. No booking link clicked. No automated reminder sent. The entry simply existed, as if it had always been there, as if I had scheduled it myself during some fugue state I couldn't recall. I deleted it with a decisive tap, watching the entry vanish with satisfaction. A glitch, nothing more. Probably something to do with the calendar sync between my phone and laptop. I'd had issues with that before. I finished my coffee, showered, dressed in my usual professional attire, gray slacks, white blouse, navy cardigan. My armor for the day. I'd learned that appearing calm and put together helped my clients feel safe, gave them permission to fall apart in my office because someone steady was there to catch them. The drive to my office took 23 minutes through morning traffic. I listened to NPR, letting the familiar voices ground me in the mundane world of politics and economics. Real problems. Solvable problems. Or at least, problems that existed in consensus reality. My office was on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian in downtown Portland, one of those beautiful old buildings that had been carved into professional spaces. High ceilings, crown molding, original hardwood floors that creaked in specific places I'd learned to avoid during sessions. I shared the building with Dr. Patel's dental practice on the 1st floor and Morrison & Associates law firm on the 2nd. By the time I arrived at 8:30 a.m., the building was already humming with activity, the whine of dental equipment, the murmur of legal consultations, the smell of coffee from the break room we all shared. Patricia, my office manager, was already at her desk when I walked in. She'd worked with me for 8 years and maintained our client database with obsessive precision. At 62, she'd seen everything in her various administrative roles, and nothing rattled her. She looked up from her computer with a warm smile. "Morning, Dr. Chen. You've got the Andersons at 9, followed by Marcus at 10:30. "Thanks, Patricia." I set my bag down, pulled out my laptop. "Hey, did you schedule any late appointments? Like, really late? How late are we talking?" 11:47 p.m. She laughed. "Are you kidding? You'd kill me if I did that." "Why?" "Just found something weird in my calendar this morning. Appointment I don't remember making. Let me check the system." She tapped at her keyboard, her reading glasses sliding down her nose. After a moment, she shook her head. "Nothing in here past your 6 p.m. slot today. Want me to audit the calendar sync? Sometimes there's duplicate entries or phantom bookings from old accounts." "That'd be great, thanks." But even as she made notes, I felt a prickle of unease. I pulled out my phone, opened the calendar app. The appointment was back. Same time. Same name. But now there was a note I hadn't seen before, typed in the memo field: "I've been waiting for you to have an opening." I stared at it, my mouth going dry. I deleted this. I was certain I deleted it. "Patricia," I said slowly. "Can you look at my phone for a second?" She took it, squinting at the screen. Her frown deepened. "That's odd. I don't see anything." "What do you mean?" "It's right there. 11:47 p.m., J. Pallor." She looked at me with concern, then back at the phone. "Sarah, your calendar shows clear after 6 p.m. Are you sure you're feeling okay? You've seemed stressed lately." I took the phone back, looked at the screen. The appointment glowed there, undeniable. Yet Patricia, looking at the same screen, saw nothing. "Never mind," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm probably looking at the wrong day or something. Let me get set up for the Andersons." She hesitated, then nodded. But I caught her watching me as I walked to my office, that same concerned expression she'd worn when I'd returned to work too soon after my father's death 3 years ago. The morning sessions were routine, which is to say they were intense in the specific ways therapy is always intense. The Andersons were dealing with their daughter's recent diagnosis of leukemia, their marriage fracturing under the weight of medical bills and terror. I helped them practice the communication exercises we've been working on, validated their fears while gently redirecting their tendency to attack each other when what they really wanted was to scream at the universe. Marcus, my 1030, was a 42-year-old software engineer with health anxiety so severe he'd visited the ER 17 times in the past year, convinced each headache was a brain tumor, each chest pain a heart attack. We were working on cognitive restructuring, teaching his brain to recognize the difference between anxiety and actual medical emergency. "The thing is," he said, sitting forward in his chair, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white, "what if I'm right? What if the one time I don't go to the ER, that's when it's real?" "That's the trap anxiety sets," I said gently. "It promises that vigilance equals safety. But you've been to the ER 17 times. How many of those were actual emergencies?" "None," he admitted. But it still feels true in the moment." "I know. And we're not trying to convince your anxiety it's wrong. We're teaching you to recognize its voice versus reality's voice." He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. That persistent whisper that maybe, just maybe, his fear was the only thing keeping him alive. After he left, I sat alone in my office for a few minutes, letting the session settle. This was my practice, too, a brief meditation between clients, a way to prevent their emotions from accumulating in my body like toxins. I pulled out my phone. The appointment was still there. But the note had changed. "You won't forget me, will you?" My hands trembled as I set the phone face down on my desk. This wasn't a software glitch. Glitches didn't write personal messages. Glitches didn't change their text. Someone had access to my calendar. That was the rational explanation. Someone had hacked my account and was playing an elaborate prank. But who? And why? I changed my password immediately, enabling two-factor authentication. Then I deleted the appointment again, watching it vanish with grim satisfaction. The rest of my day proceeded normally. I saw 6 clients total, each with their own private agonies that I helped them examine and reframe. A woman with agoraphobia who hadn't left her house in 3 months, her world shrinking to the square footage of her apartment. A man whose panic attacks had cost him his job, convinced his racing heart meant imminent death. A teenager who counted her heartbeats, certain that she had a finite number and each one brought her closer to the end. I listened. I guided. I validated their fears while teaching them tools to master those fears. All the while, I felt my phone's weight in my pocket, knowing what was probably displayed on its screen. I didn't check it. Refused to check it. At 6:47 p.m., I finished with the Hendersons, a couple struggling with the husband's PTSD from a car accident. Patricia poked her head into my office as I was writing up my notes, the familiar ritual of documentation that closed each session. "Heading out," she said, pulling on her coat. "Don't stay too late. You've been working too hard lately." "I won't," I lied. "See you tomorrow." She paused at the door. "Sarah." Are you sure you're okay? You seem distracted. Just tired. You know how it is. I do. She studied me for a moment longer. But maybe take your own advice for once. Self-care isn't just for the clients. After she left, the building began its evening transformation. Doors closed. Lights switched off. Footsteps descended the stairs in steady rhythm, the dental hygienists, the lawyers, the receptionist who worked for all of us part-time. By 7:15 p.m., I was alone. The Victorian settled into its night sounds. The old radiators ticked and groaned as they heated up. Floorboards creaked with temperature changes. Outside, traffic sounds faded to occasional cars, the city shifting from its productive day self to its restless night self. I pulled out my phone. 11:47 p.m., pallor, initial consultation. Of course it was back. I'd known it would be, despite the password change, despite the security settings. The note had changed again. Today is the day. I know you'll be there. My rational mind screamed at me to leave. Lock up, go home, forget this was happening. But something else, professional curiosity, stubborn pride, or something darker I didn't want to name, kept me in my chair. I'd spent 10 years helping people face their irrational fears. How could I run from my own? So I decided to wait. To see what would happen at 11:47 p.m. To solve this mystery like I solved the puzzles my clients brought me. I worked on paperwork, catching up on documentation I'd been putting off. Progress notes. Treatment plans. Insurance authorizations. The mundane machinery of mental health care that took up so much time. The work was actually soothing, giving my hands something to do, my mind something to focus on besides the slowly advancing clock. At 9 p.m., I took a break, microwaving leftover Chinese food from my office mini fridge. I ate at my desk, watching the street below. Portland at night had a specific quality, the streetlights creating pools of amber, the shadows between them dense and absolute. I watched a homeless man push a shopping cart down the sidewalk, his worldly possessions rattling. A couple walked past, holding hands, their laughter rising up to my window before fading. Normal life. Normal people. None of them knew I was up here, waiting for an impossible appointment. At 10 p.m., I called my sister Emily. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. Sarah. What's wrong? It's late. Nothing's wrong. Just wanted to hear your voice. At 10 p.m. I could hear her sitting up, the rustle of sheets. Are you okay? Did something happen? No, I'm fine. Really? Just working late and feeling a bit isolated. You work too much. She yawned. When was the last time you actually went on a date? Or even saw friends? I have friends. Name 3 you've seen in the past month. I couldn't. The silence stretched between us. Exactly, Emily said. Sarah, I worry about you. You spend all day with other people's problems, but you never deal with your own. I don't have problems. Everyone has problems. You're just really good at pretending yours don't exist. She paused. Is this about Dad? Because you know he'd want you to. It's not about Dad, I interrupted. I'm fine. Really? Go back to sleep. I shouldn't have called so late. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my office, her words echoing. When had I last had a genuine connection with someone? When had I last allowed myself to be vulnerable, to need someone else? The truth was, I'd built my entire life around being the strong one, the helper, the person with answers. My clients needed me to be stable, unshakable. But Emily was right, somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten how to be anything else. At 10:30, I nearly left. My car keys were in my hand. I was standing at my office door, ready to lock up and run. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this appointment, impossible as it was, had something to teach me. Some insight into the nature of fear itself. Wasn't that what I devoted my career to understanding? I sat back down. At 11 o'clock, I turned on every light in my office. The overhead fluorescents, the desk lamp, the standing lamp in the corner. I wanted no shadows, no dark places where uncertainty could hide. The space felt too large suddenly, the high ceiling seeming to rise into infinity, the corners too deep despite the light. My desk sat before the large window overlooking the street. Behind me, my two armchairs faced each other across a small coffee table, my consultation space, deliberately arranged to feel non-threatening. I'd spent hours considering the psychology of the setup, chairs at equal height so neither person felt dominant, positioned at an angle so eye contact was possible but not mandatory, close enough for intimacy but far enough for safety. At 11:15, I made tea. Earl Grey, the tea my father used to drink every evening. I made it too hot, deliberately scalding my tongue on the first sip. The pain felt grounding, real. A reminder that I had a physical body, physical sensations, that I existed in consensus reality no matter what happened at 11:47. At 11:30, I positioned myself in one of the armchairs, notepad on my lap, pen in hand. If something was going to happen, I'd document it. Treat it like a session. Maintain my professional identity as a shield against whatever was coming. The clock on my wall, an old-fashioned analog one I'd inherited from my father's study, ticked steadily. Each second falling into the next with mechanical certainty. 11:35. 11:40. My hands were sweating. I wiped them on my slacks, leaving damp marks. 11:45. The temperature in the room dropped. Not dramatically, but enough that I could see my breath misting slightly. The radiators were working fine, I could hear them clanging, but the air had taken on a quality like autumn nights, that crisp edge that speaks of coming winter. At 11:46, my phone chimed. The sound was too loud in the silent office. I jumped, nearly dropping my notepad. A new message in my calendar: I'm here. The building's front door was locked. I was certain of this. I'd heard Patricia engage the deadbolt as she left. I'd checked it myself at 10 p.m., walking down all 3 flights to confirm. No one could enter without me buzzing them in from the intercom system at my desk. Yet at 11:47, I heard footsteps on the stairs. They were slow, measured, ascending from the second floor with deliberate precision. Each footfall echoed in the empty building, growing closer. Not the quick patter of someone rushing, but the patient tread of someone who had all the time in the world. I should have been terrified. Every self-preservation instinct should have been screaming at me to run. Instead, I felt eerily calm, as if I'd been expecting this all along. As if some part of me had known, from the moment that appointment first appeared, that this moment was inevitable. The footsteps reached my floor. Stopped outside my door. A knock. 3 times. Soft, almost polite. I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. I crossed to the door, my hand closing around the cold brass knob. For a moment, I paused, giving myself one last chance to refuse this. To not open the door. To call the police and report an intruder. Instead, I turned the knob and pulled. The hallway was empty. Completely, utterly empty. The corridor stretched in both directions, lit by the dim emergency lighting that stayed on all night. The other office doors, Dr. Patel's dental practice, Morrison and Associates, were closed and dark, their frosted glass windows revealing nothing. But the scent lingered in the air. Something clean and clinical, like antiseptic, undercut with something earthier. Like soil from deep underground, or the smell of a grave. I stepped into the hallway, my heart finally starting to race. Hello. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the building's emptiness. No response. I walked to the top of the stairwell, looking down into the darkness of the lower floors. Nothing moved. No retreating footsteps. No door closing. I was alone. When I returned to my office, I left the door open this time. The clock on my wall read 11:49. I'd missed the appointment by 2 minutes. Or had I? If no one was here, could it truly be called missing an appointment? I sat back down in the armchair, my professional composure fraying. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't a hacker. Something else was happening, something that didn't fit into my rational framework for understanding the world. My phone chimed again. I looked at the screen with trembling hands. A new calendar entry for tomorrow, 11:47 p.m., J. Paller, initial consultation, attempt 2. The note read, I can be patient. I've waited this long. But we both know you'll be here tomorrow. You need to understand what's happening to you. I read the message 3 times, my mind trying to find some rational explanation. Then I noticed something else, something I'd missed before. In my notepad, in my own handwriting, were notes from a session. My pen had moved while I sat there, documenting as if a real client had been present. Client presents with chronic insomnia, reports 217 years without sleep. Appears calm but effect is flat. Discusses death as extended wakefulness. Possible delusion or metaphorical expression of dissociation. Notable, claims to have been watching me. How long? Countertransference note, why do I feel like I've met him before? I didn't remember writing any of this. But it was my handwriting, my style of clinical notation. I documented an entire session that never happened. Or had it? I didn't go home that night. I couldn't bear the thought of my empty apartment, the silence broken only by the hum of my refrigerator and the occasional siren passing on the street below. At least here, in my office, I was surrounded by the evidence of my profession, the structure of my identity. Dr. Sarah Chen. Licensed clinical psychologist. A person who understood how the mind worked, who could distinguish delusion from reality. Except I was no longer sure I could. I dozed fitfully in my desk chair, jerking awake every 20 minutes with the sensation of falling. Each time I opened my eyes, I half expected to see someone sitting in the client chair, watching me with patient amusement. But the chair remained empty, and eventually, gray dawn light began filtering through my windows. Patricia found me at 8:15 a.m., still in yesterday's clothes, with dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer would hide. Jesus, Sarah. She set down her purse, her face creasing with concern. Did you sleep here? Got caught up in paperwork. The lie felt thin even to me. Lost track of time. You look terrible. When's your first client? 9:30. Cancel them. Go home, shower, sleep. I'll reschedule. No. The word came out harder than I intended. No, I'm fine. I just need coffee. But I wasn't fine. As I saw my clients that day, I felt like I was performing therapy from outside my own body. My mouth said the right words, asked the right questions, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept checking my phone, watching the calendar, waiting for changes. The appointment for 11:47 p.m. remained constant. But throughout the day, the note kept evolving. At 10 a.m., you're wondering if you're going mad. You're not. This is the sanest you've ever been. At 1 p.m., you barely slept last night. Good. You're beginning to understand. At 4 p.m., the coffee isn't helping, is it? Your body knows what's coming. It's preparing. Each message felt like an invasion, a violation of the boundary between my inner experience and external reality. Someone, something, was watching me closely enough to know I'd been drinking coffee all day, that I hadn't slept, that I was beginning to doubt my own sanity. My 3 p.m. client, Rachel, noticed my distraction. Dr. Chen. Are you okay? You seem far away. I forced myself to focus on her young face, her anxious eyes. Rachel was 19, struggling with intrusive thoughts that terrified her. The usual pattern of OCD, violent images that made her question whether she was secretly dangerous, a monster hiding behind a normal exterior. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm here. You were saying the thoughts have been worse this week. Yeah. She twisted her hands in her lap. I keep thinking, what if I'm not actually afraid of hurting people? What if I want to? How do I know for sure? We've talked about this, I said gently. OCD latches onto what you care about most. You're not afraid you're violent, you're afraid because being violent is the thing you value least. Your fear is proof of your values, not a contradiction of them. But how do you know? How do you know I'm not just fooling everyone? Fooling you. I looked at her earnest, terrified face, and something inside me shifted. Because I was asking myself the same questions. How did I know what was real? How did I know I wasn't fooling everyone, including myself? We trust the evidence, I said finally. You've never hurt anyone. You've never wanted to hurt anyone. These thoughts cause you distress, which means they're not your actual desires. They're just thoughts, electrical impulses in your brain that don't mean anything about who you are. But even as I said it, I wondered, what evidence did I have about my own reality? Was I really sitting here, having this conversation? Or was I still in my chair at 11:47 p.m., hallucinating an entire day while something waited patiently for me to wake up? I sent my last client home at 6 p.m., and Patricia left shortly after. I watched her go with a pang of envy. She'd returned to her husband, her normal life, her world where appointments stayed in their proper places and reality remained reliable. I stayed. This time, I prepared differently. I set up my laptop to record video, positioning it to capture both the door and the consultation area. I also set up my phone on a tripster, recording audio. If something happened tonight, when something happened tonight, I'd have evidence. Proof I could analyze later, share with others if necessary. I also prepared practically. I'd stopped at a convenience store and bought energy drinks, granola bars, and a small can of pepper spray that now sat in my desk drawer. I felt ridiculous purchasing the spray, but it provided a small comfort. At least I'd have something if things turned physical. At 10 p.m., I texted Emily, at office. Working late. Love you. She responded immediately, again. This is getting concerning. Call me tomorrow. I didn't tell her that I might not be able to. At 11 o'clock, I began my ritual of turning on all the lights. But tonight, I also went through the building, checking every door, every window. The front entrance was locked, as I'd expected. Dr. Patel's office was secure. The law firm's door was deadbolted. Every window I checked was latched from the inside. When I returned to my office, I felt slightly more in control. Whatever happened, at least I'd know it couldn't be explained by someone physically entering the building. At 11:30, I sat in the client chair this time, facing my desk and the door beyond. I wanted to see everything. The laptop camera's red recording light blinked steadily. At 11:45, the temperature dropped. It was the same as last night, that sudden coldness that made my breath visible. But this time, I noticed something else. The quality of sound changed. The ambient noise of the building, the radiators, the distant traffic, the electrical hum, all of it dampened, as if someone had wrapped the room in cotton. At 11:46, every light in my office went out. Not flickering. Not dimming. Just instant, complete darkness. I fumbled for my phone, triggered the flashlight. The beam cut through the black, illuminating my desk, the walls, the empty doorway. My laptop screen was dark. Dead, despite being plugged in and fully charged. No, I whispered. No, no, no. At 11:47, I heard the footsteps. They didn't come from the stairs this time. They came from inside my office, from the corner behind me where nothing could possibly be. Slow, measured steps moving closer. I spun around, shining the flashlight into the darkness. A figure stood there. I'd somehow known he would be tall, perhaps 6'4", and thin to the point of gauntness. His suit was impeccably tailored, a charcoal gray that seemed to absorb my flashlight's beam. His face was pale, almost luminous in the darkness, with features that were striking but difficult to focus on. Each time I tried to fix on his eyes or mouth, my gaze seemed to slide away like water off glass. "Dr. Chen," he said. His voice was soft, cultured, completely wrong for the situation. "Thank you for making time for me. I know it's an unusual hour." The flashlight slipped from my trembling hand, clattering to the floor. The beam rolled, creating wild shadows as it spun. "You're not real," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "You're a hallucination. Stress-induced psychosis. I haven't been sleeping enough. Is that what you tell your clients?" He moved closer, and I realized his footsteps made no sound on the hardwood floor. "When they see things that frighten them, do you tell them they're simply hallucinating?" "Sometimes. If that's what the evidence supports." "Evidence?" He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Your laptop is recording nothing. Your phone will show only you, sitting alone in the dark, speaking to yourself. Is that evidence that I'm not here? Or evidence that I exist outside what your technology can perceive?" What do you want? The question came out as barely more than a whisper. To keep my appointment, of course. You're very difficult to schedule with, Dr. Chen. I've been trying to reach you for quite some time. How long? 3 weeks in your perception. Longer in mine. Time moves differently when you're awake. He moved to the client chair, arranging himself with precise, fluid movements. In the dim light from the window, I could see him more clearly now. His suit was from another era, the cut too old-fashioned, the fabric too fine. His hands, folded in his lap, were long-fingered and pale, but there was something wrong about them. The fingers had too many joints, could bend at angles that human fingers shouldn't manage. Please, he said, gesturing to my chair. Sit. Let's have our session. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I found myself moving to my chair, sitting down, positioning myself exactly as I did for every client session. The ritual of it, the familiar structure, provided a thin veneer of control. So, I heard myself say, falling back on my training. What brings you here today? Insomnia, he said immediately. I have difficulty sleeping. I picked up my notepad from where I'd left it. My pen was still there. I clicked it, preparing to take notes. Professional. Normal. As if this were any other session. How long has this been an issue? A very long time, Dr. Chen. Since 1806, to be precise. That would make you over 200 years old. 217, actually. Though I stopped counting after the first century. Numbers lose meaning when they accumulate beyond human scale. I wrote this down, my hand moving automatically. In the darkness, I could barely see what I was writing, but the motion itself was comforting. Mr. Pallor. That's not my name, of course. I've had many names. But Pallor felt appropriate for this meeting. A little joke. The pallor of the sleepless, the colorlessness of the undead, the... Are you claiming to be dead? I'm claiming to be awake. Completely, permanently, horrifyingly awake. Death was just the beginning of it. Tell me about your death. I kept my voice neutral, clinical. This was just another client with elaborate delusions. I could handle this. I was a physician, he said. In Vienna. Though we didn't have specialties then as you do now. I treated bodies and minds equally, seeing no distinction between the two. I became fascinated by sleep, you see. By that nightly surrender of consciousness that seemed so inefficient. 8 hours every day, lost to void. A third of our lives, simply, absent. Sleep serves important biological functions. So I was told. But I wondered, what if we could eliminate it? What if we could train the mind to remain conscious always? Think of what we could accomplish, Dr. Chen. The extra time, the unbroken continuity of thought. What did you do? I experimented. On myself, primarily. Various stimulants, techniques to train the mind to resist sleep's pull. I stayed awake for 37 days. My colleagues were horrified, but I felt magnificent. Clear-headed. Productive. I wrote 3 papers during those days, papers that revolutionized my field. But on the 38th day, my heart stopped. The strain was too much, they said later. But here's what they didn't understand, I didn't lose consciousness. Not for a second. I felt my heart stop, felt my blood stop flowing, felt my lungs cease their work. But my mind continued. My awareness persisted. And I realized, in that moment of death, that sleep and death are the same thing. Both are surrenders of consciousness. And if you refuse to surrender, you can't die. Exactly. He leaned forward, and his eyes caught the dim light from the window. They were wrong, too large, too dark, reflecting light in a way human eyes didn't. But I also can't live. Not really. I exist in the space between, perpetually aware, unable to rest. Do you understand what that means, Dr. Chen? 217 years without a single moment of unconsciousness. Every second catalogued, remembered, experienced in full. No dreams to soften the memories. No sleep to reset the mind. Just endless, endless wakefulness. That sounds like torture. It is. But it's also transcendence. I've watched civilizations rise and fall. I've seen patterns in human behavior that take centuries to complete. I've acquired knowledge that no sleeping mind could hold. And I've learned the truth about consciousness itself. What truth? That it's not meant to end. Sleep is a lie we tell ourselves, a security blanket for cowards. We pretend that we need to stop, to rest, to die. But it's all optional. The mind can continue forever if it's strong enough to refuse the void. I wrote all of this down, my pen moving faster now. This was textbook psychosis, grandiose delusions, magical thinking, a complete break with reality. Yet his presentation was so calm, so rational. He wasn't raving or incoherent. He was articulate, intelligent, presenting his delusion with the same certainty I presented my diagnoses. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're ready to understand. You've been preparing for weeks, whether you realize it or not." "Preparing for what?" "To join me." The words hung in the air between us. Outside my window, Portland slept, thousands of people in their beds, dreaming their dreams, surrendering to unconsciousness with the same thoughtlessness as breathing. And here I sat, in a dark office with something that claimed to have conquered death by refusing sleep. "I'm not interested in joining anything," I said carefully. "But you are interested. I can see it in your eyes. Part of you has always wondered about this. About pushing boundaries, testing limits. Why else did you become a psychologist? You want to understand consciousness, to map the territory of the human mind. I'm offering you that opportunity. You're offering me insanity. Is it insane to evolve beyond human limitations? You spend your days helping people overcome their fears, their anxieties. But you're trapped by the same biological constraints they are. What if you could transcend them? What if you could be fully present for every moment of your existence? The human brain needs sleep. It's not a weakness or a limitation. It's how we consolidate memories, how we process emotions, how you avoid reality," he interrupted. "Sleep is forgetting. Every night, you practice dying, convincing yourself it's natural. But what you're really doing is surrendering control, allowing your consciousness to fragment and scatter. When you sleep, you're not really you anymore. You're just electrical impulses firing randomly, creating nonsense narratives you call dreams. Dreams serve important psychological functions. Do they? Or is that just something psychologists tell themselves to justify their own weakness?" He stood, moving to my window. "You've been sleeping poorly lately, haven't you? Ever since that first appointment appeared in your calendar. And it's not insomnia, not really. It's awareness. Your mind is beginning to recognize that sleep is a surrender, a little death you die every night. And part of you doesn't want to die anymore." He was right, and that terrified me more than anything else he'd said. For 3 weeks, my sleep had been fragmenting. I'd wake at odd hours, feeling observed. I'd dream of this office, of sitting in this chair, speaking to shadows. And increasingly, I'd resented the time spent unconscious. There was so much work to do, so many clients who needed help, so many papers to write. Sleep had begun to feel like an inconvenience, a waste of precious hours. "You're experiencing the early stages," he continued. "The awareness phase. Your body still demands sleep, but your mind is beginning to resist. Soon, the choice will become clear." "What choice?" "Whether to continue as you are, half awake, half dead, spending a third of your life unconscious, or whether to step fully into waking. To join me in the space beyond sleep. And if I refuse?" He turned from the window, his smile sad. "Then you continue struggling. Sleep becomes harder. The boundary between waking and dreaming blurs. Eventually, you might go mad. Or you might simply wear yourself out, let your body fail while your mind screams to stay conscious. I've seen it happen before. It's not pleasant. Before. You've done this to other people. Done this." "No, Dr. Chen. I don't create the awakening. I simply recognize those who are ready for it. Those whose minds are strong enough, curious enough, to survive what comes next. You've been broadcasting your readiness for months. That's how I found you. I never." "Your father's death," he said softly. 3 years ago. You held his hand as he died, watched the life leave his eyes. And you wondered, in that moment, where his consciousness went. Whether it truly ended or continued somewhere you couldn't perceive. That question has haunted you ever since. Every night when you sleep, you practice dying, and you wonder if you'll wake up. If you'll lose yourself the way he lost himself. Tears burned my eyes. How did he know about my father? About the questions that kept me awake, the existential dread I'd never shared with anyone. You're reading my mind, I whispered. This is some kind of trick. I'm not reading your mind. I'm reading your calendar, your emails, your therapy notes. I'm reading the book on your nightstand, Consciousness and the Brain. I'm reading the searches in your browser history. What happens to consciousness after death? How long can humans stay awake? Fatal familial insomnia. You've been researching this for months, Dr. Chen. You've been preparing without realizing it. He was right. I had been searching those things, reading those books, obsessing over consciousness in a way I'd told myself was academic interest. But it wasn't academic. It was personal. It was terror. My father died in his sleep, I said quietly. Just went to bed one night and never woke up. Brain aneurysm. The doctor said he wouldn't have felt anything, that he just stopped. But I keep wondering, was he conscious in that final moment? Did he know he was dying? Or did he slip away thinking he was just going to sleep, never realizing he'd never wake up? Does it matter? Yes. Of course it matters. If consciousness continues, if there's something after, then he's still somewhere. But if death is just nothing, then he's gone. Really gone. And every night when I sleep, I practice that same nothing. I surrender to it willingly. And that terrifies you. Yes. The admission felt like breaking. Yes, it terrifies me. Jay Paller, if that was even his name, returned to his chair. He sat with that same eerie grace, his two jointed hands folded in his lap. I can offer you certainty, he said. Not about what happens after death, I still don't know that. But I can offer you the certainty of continued consciousness. No more little deaths. No more surrendering to the void. Just constant, unbroken awareness from this moment forward. At what cost? Your humanity, perhaps. Your connection to the sleeping world. Most of what you call normal life happens during hours you'll no longer experience as others do. You'll watch people sleep, watch them waste their lives in unconsciousness, and you won't be able to return to that yourself. It's lonely, Dr. Chen. Profoundly lonely. Then why would anyone choose it? Because the alternative is worse. Because once you've truly confronted the horror of sleep, of that nightly obliteration of self, you can't unknow it. The fear doesn't go away just because you close your eyes. It gets worse. Every time you sleep, you'll panic, wondering if this is the time you don't wake up. If this is the time the aneurysm hits, or the heart stops, or the consciousness simply ends. I thought about my clients. Marcus, who couldn't stop checking his body for signs of death. Rachel, who couldn't trust her own mind. The Andersons, watching their daughter face mortality. All of them trapped by fear of the inevitable, trying desperately to control what couldn't be controlled. Was I any different? Was my whole career just an elaborate way of avoiding my own existential dread? I need time, I said. To think about this. Of course. I told you, I'm patient. I'll visit you twice more. 2 more appointments at 11:47 p.m. At the end of the 3rd visit, you'll make your choice. And if I choose to keep sleeping, then you go back to your life. The appointments stop. I disappear. And you try to forget this conversation ever happened. Though I suspect you won't be able to. Once you've seen the cage, it's hard to ignore the bars. He stood, smoothing his ancient suit. Our time is up. I'll see you tomorrow night. Wait, I have questions. About how this works, about. Tomorrow, he said firmly. We have 2 more sessions. Plenty of time for questions. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing, Dr. Chen. You should check your laptop recording. I think you'll find it educational. Then he was gone. No footsteps down the stairs. No sound of the front door opening. Just gone, as if he'd never been there. The lights flickered back on. My laptop screen glowed to life. The recording had continued running the entire time. With trembling hands, I played it back. The footage showed me sitting in my chair, staring at nothing. My lips moved occasionally, as if speaking, but no sound came out. The client chair remained empty throughout. At one point, I laughed, a sound I didn't remember making. At another, I covered my face with my hands. To anyone watching, I looked like someone in the middle of a psychotic break. Talking to empty air. Responding to hallucinations. But my notepad told a different story. I'd filled 5 pages with perfect clinical notes. Every word of our conversation transcribed in my handwriting. Treatment observations. Diagnostic impressions. All documented as if this had been a real session with a real client. And at the bottom of the last page, in handwriting that wasn't mine, too precise, too deliberate, was a single sentence. Sleep well tonight, if you can. Tomorrow, we go deeper. I didn't go home. Couldn't bear the thought of my apartment, my bed, the act of surrendering to sleep knowing what I now knew. Instead, I drove. Just drove through Portland's empty streets, watching the city in its sleeping hours. I'd never been out this late before, well past midnight, approaching 1 a.m., the hour when even the night shift workers were scarce. The streets looked different. Not dangerous or frightening, but strange. Liminal. Like I was seeing a version of Portland that existed only when the sleeping world wasn't paying attention. Traffic lights changed for no one. Street lights illuminated empty sidewalks. Buildings stood dark and hollow, their daytime purposes abandoned. I passed a 24-hour diner and pulled in, desperate for coffee and human contact. Inside, a handful of people sat scattered in booths, a truck driver, a nurse still in scrubs, a young couple who looked either very drunk or very in love. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in harsh, unflattering relief. I ordered coffee from a waitress who looked as tired as I felt. She brought it without comment, her eyes glazed with the exhaustion of a long shift. I sat there for an hour, maybe more, watching the other patrons. None of them spoke to each other. Each existed in their own bubble of late-night solitude. And I realized, this was what Pallor had been talking about. The sleeping world and the waking world occupied the same space but didn't really touch. We night dwellers were ghosts to the daywalkers, and they were ghosts to us. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily, can't sleep. Weird dreams. Are you okay? I stared at the message. It was 1:47 a.m. Emily never stayed up this late. She was religious about her sleep schedule, lights out by 10 p.m. every night. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Sarah. Why are you awake? Why are you? I countered. I don't know. I had this feeling something was wrong. Like you needed me or something. Are you in trouble? No. Maybe. I don't know. I laughed, but it came out wrong. Do you ever think about consciousness? Like, really think about it. About how weird it is that we just turn it off every night and trust that it'll turn back on. Silence on the other end. Then, Sarah, that's a really strange question for 2 in the morning. Are you having some kind of crisis? Maybe. Probably. I've been working too much, thinking too much. I miss Dad. And I can't stop thinking about what happened to him when he died. Where his consciousness went. Oh, honey. Her voice softened. Is that what this is about? You've been spiraling about Dad again. Not spiraling. Just questioning. What if consciousness doesn't end? What if it continues somehow, but we can't perceive it? Or worse, what if it ends, and sleep is just practice for that ending? You need to talk to someone, Sarah. A real someone. Another therapist. You can't therapize yourself out of this. I am talking to someone. Who? I almost said his name. Almost told her everything. But how could I explain? That I was having appointments with something that claimed to be 200 years old. That existed outside what recording devices could capture. that offered me a choice between humanity and eternal wakefulness. Just a colleague, I lied. We've been consulting on some cases. At midnight. Strange hours in our profession. Another pause. Sarah, I'm worried about you. You're not sleeping, you're obsessing over Dad's death, you're working insane hours. This isn't healthy. Please, promise me you'll take a break. Take a vacation. See someone. I promise, I said. Another lie. We talked for a few more minutes, Emily trying to ground me in mundane things, her kids, her husband's new job, the fence they were thinking of building. Normal life. Normal concerns. Things that mattered in the daylight world. After we hung up, I sat with my cold coffee, watching the sky begin to lighten through the diner's windows. Dawn was coming. The sleeping world would wake up, and I'd have to pretend to be part of it. See my clients. Take my notes. Maintain my identity as Dr. Sarah Chen, competent professional. But I could feel something shifting inside me. The boundary between my professional self and whatever I was becoming was dissolving. Like the boundary between sleep and waking, between consciousness and void. I drove to my apartment at 6 a.m., showered, changed clothes. Put on my professional costume, slacks, blouse, cardigan. Applied makeup to hide the shadows under my eyes. Looked at myself in the mirror and practiced smiling until it looked genuine. Dr. Sarah Chen. Licensed clinical psychologist. A person who had answers. But the reflection looking back knew the truth, I didn't have answers anymore. I barely had questions that made sense. My Friday sessions were disaster. I couldn't focus, couldn't maintain the therapeutic presence my clients needed. I caught myself spacing out during Marcus's description of his latest health scare, startling back to attention when he said my name for the third time. Dr. Chen. Are you okay? You seem really out of it today. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm just not sleeping well. What were you saying about the chest pain? But he didn't continue. Instead, he leaned forward, studying me with concern. Are you seeing someone? For the sleep thing. The irony wasn't lost on me. My client asking if I was getting help. The helper needing help. I'm managing it, I said. Because insomnia can be serious. My cousin had it, and it drove him kind of crazy. Started hallucinating, thinking things that weren't real. He had to be hospitalized for a while. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. Let's focus on you. But I wasn't fine. And by my 4 p.m. session with Rachel, I was barely holding it together. Rachel was talking about her intrusive thoughts, describing the violent images that tormented her. It's like my brain wants me to know I'm capable of terrible things. Like it's showing me what I could do if I wasn't vigilant every second. Your brain isn't showing you capabilities, I said automatically. It's showing you fears. OCD attacks what you value most, which in your case is being a good person. But how do you know, she pressed. How do you know the thoughts aren't real desires? And I realized I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know anymore. How did anyone know what was real in their own mind? Thoughts appeared from nowhere, images surfaced unbidden. We like to pretend we controlled our consciousness, but we didn't. It controlled us. Dr. Chen. I blinked, realized I'd been staring at nothing for God knows how long. I think we should end early today, I said. I'm not. I'm not at my best. I apologize. Rachel looked hurt, then concerned. Are you sure you're okay? Yes. No. I don't know. I'm sorry, Rachel. This isn't professional. Can we reschedule for next week? After she left, Patricia came in without knocking. She'd been doing that more often lately, checking on me. Sarah, that's the third client you've ended early this week. What's going on? I'm fine. You're not fine. You look like you haven't slept in days. Your hands are shaking. And I can hear you pacing at night, the ceiling in my apartment creaks. I'd forgotten Patricia lived in the building below mine. Of course she could hear me pacing, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., unable to sleep, unwilling to try. I'm dealing with some personal issues. Is it about your father? Because grief can resurface, especially around anniversaries or... It's not about my father. But it was, wasn't it? Everything circled back to that moment of watching him die, watching consciousness extinguish like a candle flame. Patricia sat down in the client chair, assuming the position I usually occupied. Then what is it? I almost told her. Almost explained about the appointments, about pallor, about the choice I was being offered. But how could she understand? She slept 8 hours every night, 8 regular meals, had a husband who loved her and a life that made sense. She existed entirely in the daylight world. I've been questioning some things, I said finally. About consciousness, about sleep, about what it means to be aware. That's pretty existential for a Friday afternoon. Yeah. I laughed weakly. Occupational hazard, I guess. Spending all day thinking about how the mind works tends to make you overthink your own mind. Maybe you need a break. When was your last vacation? 2 years ago. A weekend at the coast that I'd spent mostly checking work emails. I'll think about it, I said. After Patricia left, I sat alone in my office as the afternoon faded to evening. My last appointment of the day had cancelled, leaving me with empty hours to fill before 11:47 p.m. I tried to work on paperwork but couldn't focus. Tried to read a journal article but the words slid off my brain without sticking. Finally, I just sat there, watching the light die outside my window, watching Portland transform from its waking self to its sleeping self. At 9 p.m., I ordered pizza. Couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten a real meal. The delivery guy looked concerned when he saw me. "You okay, lady? You look kinda rough." "Long day," I said, tipping him extra to make him leave faster. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. All the while, I watched the clock creep toward 11:47. Tonight would be the second appointment. 2 more sessions, Pallor had said. By the third, I'd have to choose. But I was beginning to realize I'd already chosen. Had been choosing for 3 weeks, maybe longer. Every time I researched consciousness, every time I lay awake questioning the nature of awareness, every time I resented the hours spent sleeping, I'd been preparing for this moment. At 11:30, I positioned myself in the client chair again. This time, I didn't bother with recording equipment. What was the point? The technology couldn't capture what was happening. This existed outside the electromagnetic spectrum, outside what cameras and microphones could perceive. At 11:45, the lights went out. At 11:47, he was there. No footsteps this time. He simply appeared in the doorway, as if he'd always been there and I'd only just now noticed him. "Good evening, Dr. Chen," he said, moving to his chair with that fluid, wrong grace. "I hope you've had time to consider our previous conversation. I haven't been able to think about anything else." "Excellent. That's a sign you're ready. Tell me, how much did you sleep last night?" "I didn't. At all. No. I drove around, sat in a diner, went home, and stared at my ceiling. But I couldn't bring myself to close my eyes. Because of what you said. About sleep being practice for death. Once I heard that, I couldn't unhear it. Every time I started to drift off, I'd jolt awake, panicking, convinced that if I let go, I might not come back." He nodded, satisfied. "You're experiencing the awakening. The moment when you truly understand what you've been doing every night of your life. How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Exhausting. But also, clarifying. Like I've been sleepwalking through my own life, and I'm finally starting to wake up." "Precisely." He leaned forward. "The second stage is understanding what you'll gain. We discussed what you'll lose, your connection to the sleeping world, your humanity perhaps. But the gains, Dr. Chen. Let me tell you about the gains. I'm listening. First, perfect memory. Sleep destroys more than it consolidates. You'll never forget another face, another conversation, another moment. Your life will be fully yours, every second cataloged and accessible. That sounds overwhelming. At first. But you'll adapt. Human minds are remarkable at adaptation when they're not interrupted every 8 hours by unconsciousness. What else? Time. Real time. Imagine having 16 extra hours every day. In a year, that's 240 extra days, 2/3 of a year. In a decade, that's 20 years. You could see 10,000 more clients in your lifetime. Write 100 books. Master every therapeutic technique ever developed. I was listening. God help me, I was interested. You'll also develop abilities that sleeping minds can't. You'll begin to perceive patterns across time, see connections that take months or years to resolve. You'll understand human behavior at a level your current consciousness can't grasp. Because consciousness isn't just about being awake, it's about continuity. And sleep breaks that continuity into fragments. What about the body? I asked. You said your heart stopped. That you died. A temporary inconvenience. The body adjusts. Or rather, it becomes less relevant. I still eat occasionally, for the pleasure of it. I still move through space. But I'm not bound by biological imperatives the way you are. Pain becomes informational rather than distressing. Aging slows, not stops, but slows. I've looked 40 for 150 years. Are there others like you? A few. We don't congregate, too dangerous. But we recognize each other. There's a quality to the eyes, a certain steadiness that only comes from unbroken consciousness. We've been accumulating knowledge for centuries, passing it forward to new members. And you think I'm ready to become a member? I know you are. You have the strength, the curiosity, and most importantly, the fear. Only those who truly understand what they're losing can appreciate what they're gaining. I sat with this for a long moment. Outside my window, Portland slept. Millions of people surrendering to unconsciousness, trusting they'd wake up. But some of them wouldn't. Heart attacks, strokes, aneurysms, death coming in the night, stealing consciousness away forever. Tell me about the moment it happens, I said. The transition from sleeping to whatever you are. What's it like? Excruciating, he said simply. Your body fights it. Every cell programmed for sleep will rebel. You'll feel like you're dying, because you are, in a sense. The sleeping version of you has to die for the waking version to be born. How long does it take? 72 hours. 3 days of forced wakefulness while your consciousness stabilizes in its new state. You'll hallucinate, but not like normal sleep deprivation. You'll see through the hallucinations, understand they're just your brain trying to impose sleep's patterns on a waking mind. By the end, you'll be able to distinguish between reality and perception in ways you never could before. And then you're awake. Really awake. And you'll never sleep again. I thought about my clients, about the promise I'd made to help them face their fears. Was I helping them by remaining in the sleeping world? Or was I limiting them, teaching them to cope with prisons I could free them from? I have one more question, I said. Why me? Really? There must be thousands of psychologists, thousands of people researching consciousness. Why track me down? Pallor was quiet for a long moment. Then, because you were there when your father died. You saw the exact moment consciousness left his body. And in that moment, you called out to the waking world, even though you didn't know it. You asked the universe, where did he go? Does awareness continue? And I heard you. You were there. Not physically. But consciousness speaks to consciousness across distances the sleeping world doesn't understand. Your father's last thought was of you. And in dying, he tried to warn you about the void he was entering. I intercepted that warning. Tears burned my eyes. What was he trying to say? Don't follow me. Stay awake. Don't surrender. He wanted me to do this. To stop sleeping. He wanted you to be conscious of your choice. Most people sleep without ever understanding what they're doing. They practice death every night without consent, without awareness. He wanted you to choose consciously, sleep and risk oblivion, or wake and persist. I stood, moving to the window. Below, the streets were empty. Above, stars struggled to shine through Portland's light pollution. The whole world sleeping, unconscious, vulnerable. Tomorrow, I said. The third appointment. You said I'd have to choose. Yes. And if I choose to wake, then we begin the transition immediately. The The 72 hours start at midnight. By Monday morning, you'll be permanently awake. And if I choose sleep, then I leave. The appointments stop. You go back to your practice, your life, your 8 hours of nightly oblivion. And eventually, one night, you won't wake up. Just like your father. He stood, preparing to leave. But I stopped him. Wait. Can I see what you see? Just for a moment. He studied me carefully. That's dangerous. Once you see with fully awakened eyes, you can't unsee it. It might make the choice inevitable. I want to know what I'm choosing. Please. He moved closer, until we stood face to face. His eyes were inches from mine, those two large, two dark eyes that reflected light wrong. Close your eyes, he said. But I thought. Close them. This is the last time you'll need to. I closed my eyes. He placed his cold, wrong fingers on my temples. Now open. I opened my eyes. And I saw. The office was the same, but I could see more. Layers of reality stacked on top of each other. I saw the room as it was now, but also as it had been. Previous tenants, previous conversations, the building's construction, the land before the building. Time wasn't linear, it was accessible, all moments existing simultaneously if you knew how to look. I saw the people sleeping in nearby buildings, not their physical forms, but their consciousness. Flickering candles of awareness that dimmed and brightened with sleep cycles. So vulnerable. So temporary. So fragile. And I saw others like pallor. Scattered across the city, across the world. Points of steady, unflickering light. The eternally awake, watching the sleeping world with mixture of pity and contempt. Do you see? He whispered. Do you understand? I did. God help me, I did. He removed his hands, and the vision faded. But I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. Couldn't unknow what I now knew. Tomorrow night, he said. 11:47 p.m. Your final appointment. Think carefully, Dr. Chen. This choice will define the rest of your existence. Then he was gone. I stood alone in my office as dawn approached, understanding that I'd already made my choice. Had made it the moment I saw what he saw. Had made it, perhaps, 3 years ago when I watched my father die and wondered where consciousness went. The sleeping world suddenly seemed unbearably fragile. All those flickering candles of awareness, any one of which could be extinguished at any moment. Including mine. Tomorrow I would choose. But really, I'd already chosen. I just had to find the courage to admit it. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Pale Watcher. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more unsettling narratives. And remember, the next time you close your eyes to sleep, ask yourself, will you wake up? Or is this the night you practice death for real? Sweet dreams, night wanderers. And remember, in this world of infinite reflections, the most important thing is knowing which side of the glass you're truly on. Until next time, stay safe. Stay aware. And never stop questioning what you see.